Hello everyone, today I will teach you how to find for the volume of a cylinder and a cone. First, let us watch this video to know how the formula in finding the volume of a cylinder was derived.
In this video, we're going to learn how to find the volume of a cylinder and more specifically, where the volume of a cylinder formula comes from. We'll start by going back down to the base of the cylinder, which happens to be a circle. And in previous years, you've learned that the area of a circle is pi r squared. But where does the pi r squared actually come from? So let's take a look. If we strip away the formula and begin just with one r, we can see on our circle that's the radius. If we multiply by a second r times r actually produces a square covering an area of r times r. So whatever the radius is times itself. And we can also show this as r squared, like we can see on the screen now. Also note that this is 1r squared, which does not cover the entire circle. So let's add another r squared, which gives us a total of 2 times r squared. We can see that that covers about a little more than half the circle, so that's not going to do. So let's add a third r squared to the mix, and we can see we're covering 3/4 of the circle and just a little bit more. But we can still see that some of our circle, 1/4 of the circle, is not covered. So let's toss on a fourth r squared. We've now covered the entire circle, but you'll notice that we now have a large square that is covering the circle plus an additional space in the corners. So 4r squared actually is an area that is too big to be called the area of a circle. We actually have the area of a square here. So it's a little bit bigger than what we need. So let's break this down a little bit. By taking that 4r squared and visualizing the corners that we need to eliminate, those corners have an area of 0.86 r squared. And if I subtract those two values, 4r squared minus 0.86 r squared, we end up with 3.14 times r squared, which is ultimately pi r squared. Later, in another video, we'll talk about where that 0.86 times r squared comes from. But for now, we're going to go back to the base of our cylinder, which is a circle. We know how to find the area of a circle, and ultimately, the area of a circle essentially represents the volume of a cylinder with a height of just over 0. If it is 0, then obviously the volume is going to be 0. Anything times 0 is 0. But picture this, as our height increases to 1 unit, we can see the volume of a cylinder is simply the area of a circle, pi r squared, times 1. I can increase the height, and I now have pi r squared times 2, pi r squared times 3, and finally, we can sub in any height we'd like by simply using a variable of h. So our volume of a cylinder formula is actually the area of the base, which is pi r squared for our area of a circle, and then we simply multiply it by how tall the cylinder is. So we end up with a volume of pi r squared times h for the volume of our cylinder.
Again, to find for the volume of a cylinder, this is the formula that we will use, pi r squared times height. Now let's try some examples. Find the volume of the cylinder below, which has a height of 9 feet and a radius of 6 feet. Again, the formula that we will use to find for the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times height. So all we need to do is to substitute the given information here in our formula. By doing so, we'll have 3.14 times 6 feet squared times 9 feet. 6 feet squared is equal to 36 square feet. Multiply it by 3.14 and 9 feet will give us 1017.36 cubic feet. And this is now the volume of this cylinder. Again, please take note of the unit of measurement. Since we're talking about volume, this should be in cubic units. Next example, we have here a cylinder with a radius of 3 inches and a height of 9 inches. Again, for us to find for its volume, we will use the formula pi r squared times height. Substituting the given information in our formula, we'll have 3.14 times 3 inches squared times 9 inches. 3 inches squared is equal to 9 square inches. Multiply it by 3.14 and 9 inches, we'll have 254.34 cubic inches. And this is now the volume of this cylinder here. For our last example, let's take a look at this word problem. A cylindrical water glass has a radius of 3 centimeters and a height of 8 centimeters. How much water does it contain when it is half filled? Again, the question is asking for the volume of this cylindrical water glass when it is only half filled. Again, to know the volume of the entire cylindrical water glass, we will use the formula pi r squared times height. Substituting the given information in the problem, we'll have 3.14 times 3 centimeters squared times 8 centimeters. 3 centimeters squared is equal to 9 square centimeters. Multiply it to 3.14 and 8 centimeters. We'll have 226.08 cubic centimeters. Okay, this is the volume of the entire water glass. But since the question is asking for the volume or the water it contains when it is only half filled, we will divide the volume of the cylindrical water glass by 2. And that will give us 113.04 cubic centimeters. Therefore, it contains 113.04 cubic centimeters of water when it is half filled. Now, let's see how the volume of a cylinder is related to the volume of a cone by watching this video.
In this video, we'll demonstrate the ratio of a volume of a cone and a volume of a cylinder. We have a cone and a cylinder with the same diameter and height. The cylinder is filled exactly with 3 full cones of water. The volume of the cone is 1/3 of the volume of the cylinder.
So just like in the video we watched, the volume of a cone is 1/3 of the volume of a cylinder, or the volume of a cylinder is 3 times the volume of a cone. Therefore, for us to find for the volume of a cylinder, or a cone rather, we will use the formula pi r squared times height divided by 3. Now, let's try to solve some examples. Given that we have here a cone whose radius is 2 feet and whose height is 3 feet, let us find for its volume. Again, the formula that we will use is pi r squared times height divided by 3. Substituting the given information, we'll have 3.14 times 2 feet squared times 3 feet all over 3. 2 feet squared is equal to 4 square feet. Multiply it by 3.14 and 3 feet, we'll have 37.68 cubic feet. Then we still need to divide it by 3, and that will give us 12.56 cubic feet. And this is now the volume of this cone. Next example, this time we are given a cone whose radius is 3 millimeters and height is 7 millimeters. Again, to find for its volume, we will use the formula pi r squared times height divided by 3. Substituting the given information, we'll have 3.14 times 3 millimeters squared times 7 millimeters all over 3. 3 millimeters squared is equal to 9 square millimeters. Multiply it to 3.14 and 7 millimeters. We'll have 197.82 cubic millimeters, but we still need to divide it by 3, and that will give us 65.94 cubic millimeters, and this is now the volume of this cone. For our last example, the radius and height of a cone are 12 millimeters and 25 millimeters respectively. So we have radius is 12 millimeters and height is 25 millimeters. Now let's find for the volume of this cone. And for us to do that, we will use the formula pi r squared times height divided by 3. Substituting the given information, we'll have 3.14 times 12 millimeters squared times 25 millimeters all over 3. Okay, we have 12 millimeters squared is equal to 144 square millimeters. Multiply it to 3.14 and 25 millimeters. We'll have 11,304 cubic millimeters. Divided by 3, that will give us the volume of this cone, which is 3,768 cubic millimeters. And that's it for our lesson for today. Thank you for listening.